Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to project number 11 of 25 beginner JavaScript projects. In this application, we're going to show you how to create this flashcards project. As you can see, I already have a couple of flashcards here on the screen. To view the answer, all you have to do is click on the flashcard. To reveal it, to hide it, just click it again. And to create a flashcard, all you have to do is fill out these input fields. All right, here's our new flashcard. And this is completely responsive. So this is how it's going to look on a phone. So if you want to study on your phone, you can do that. And we're also using local storage for this, so you don't have to worry about clicking on the refresh button. If you click on the refresh button, your contents are still going to be here. Even if you exit out of the project, when you come back, this is still going to be here. I created a website dedicated to the projects that we're going to be building in this series. You can find it at jsprospect.com. I also talk a little bit about the technologies that you need to become a web developer. And you can even access the tutorials directly from here. So if you wanted to watch this one, just click it and you can watch the tutorial here. If you want to learn more about these projects, you can click here. And I wrote a small article that talks about each project. You could even test the project out before you build it. So let's say that you wanted to test this one out. You can click here and you can test out the project. If you want to learn how to host your applications the way I did here, I wrote an article that shows you how to do it. So just click on this link and it's going to take you to this article, host your website for free with GitHub Pages. And here I show you the steps that you need to take to host your application on GitHub Pages. There's only 4 steps, so it's actually very simple to do. All right, guys, let's start this project by creating this header. We're going to use the header tag, and we're going to create a container within it. Let's create another container within this one. We're going to give this a class name of nav. Let's add our title. Now we're going to create our 2 buttons within a div element. Let's shift alt down to copy that. This is the new card button, and this is the del cards button. Let me show you what those do. So when we click on the new card button, it's going to display this, and when we click on the del cards button, it's going to delete the flashcards from the screen. And of course, in order to be able to do that, we're going to have to call on functions. So we're going to use onClick. This one is going to call on a function called show create card box. And this one is going to call on a function called del flashcards, short for delete flashcards. Right underneath the header, we're going to create the create flashcard box. So let's create another pair of div tags. We're going to give this a class name of container. So this is going to have the same features than the other container that we just created. Let's create another container within this one. Let's give this a name of create box. All right, let's add a title to it. It's going to say create flashcard, and let's add some styling. We're going to use a text align center, and we're also going to change the color of the text to black. And I know it's already black, but we add some features with CSS that's going to make it a different color, but I just want to make sure that it's black. That's why I added that feature here. Let's create our label. This is going to be for the question. Let's type that in here. And we're going to use text area. We're going to use this instead of input because I wanted to give the user a bigger area for them to write on. All right, this is going to have an ID of question. Let's delete the columns and rows. We're going to add that with CSS. And we can actually select this and shift alt down. We're going to use that again, but let's add a space in between. And we're going to change this to answer. Let's create another pair of div tags. This is where our two buttons are going to go. Let's Shift Alt down to copy this. This is going to be the save button, and this is the close button. And let me show you what those do. So when we click save, it's going to create a flashcard and it's going to add it on the screen. When we click close, it's going to hide that from the screen. All right, for this one, we're going to call on a function named add flashcard. And for this one, we're going to call on a function called hide create box. And right before the last closing div tag here, we're going to create another pair of div tags. This is where the actual flashcards are going to go. So let's give this a class name of flashcards. And of course, we're going to add these dynamically through JavaScript, and that's going to happen when we click on the save button. That's going to be it for the HTML. All right, let's start by removing the default padding and margin from all of the elements. We're going to access them using the asterisk. Let's set padding to 0 and margin to 0. We're also going to use box sizing border box. For the body, we're going to change the font family, but I don't want to use any of the built-in fonts. So let's go search for the Google Font API. We're going to click on this second link. Go ahead and choose a font that you want to use. I'm going to go with this one. Click select this style, import, copy the contents within the style tags, and you're going to paste that up here. And in order to use that font, we also have to copy this. All right, we're going to paste it in here. Let's also change the font size. Let's go with 1 rem, and let's change the background color to white smoke. We want our header to have a different background color. We're going to go with white for that one. Let's give our button some features. We're going to start with a padding of 8 pixels. Let's remove the outline. Let's use cursor pointer. Let's give them a border of 1 pixel solid, light gray. Let's use border radius, 5 pixels, and let's change the background color to white smoke. Let's also give them a hover effect. So when you hover them, we want to make them black, but we don't want them to be too dark. So we're going to go with a setting of 0.1. For the container, we're going to change the width to 95%, and we're going to place it in the center with margin auto. We're going to turn the nav class into a flex box with display flex, and we're going to use justify content space between. So notice that this placed our buttons on the right and the title on the left, and that's because we use this div element here. So if we wouldn't have used this, our new card button would have been in the center, and of course that's not what we want. We want these two buttons to be together, so that's what this div element is doing, just in case you were wondering. All right, we're going to change the width to 100%. Let's place it in the center with margin auto. And let's give this a padding from top to bottom of 20 pixels and 0 on the left and the right. Let's change the background color to white. And notice that our buttons, they don't have the font family that we brought in. So we're going to change that to font family inherit. And now they have the font family. All right, now let's actually create this create box. Let's give it a width of 380 pixels. Let's place it in the center with margin auto. Let's give it a padding of 20 pixels on all sides. Let's bring it down a little bit from the top by 10 pixels. Let's give it round edges, 5 pixels. Background color, we're going to change it to white smoke. And let's give it a box shadow of 0, 2 pixels, 4 pixels, 0, black. All right, let's hover this and we're going to go with 0.5. For the text area, let's change the width to 100%. Let's give it a border radius of 5 pixels. And let's change the font family. Let's use inherit. And let's give them a border of 1 pixel, solid, light gray. For the button, we're going to use a width of fit content just in case we need it. And for the actual flashcards, which is going to be this area here, we're going to turn this into a flex box. We're going to use justify content, flex start, align items, flex start, and we're going to use flex wrap, and I'm going to show you what these features are doing in a moment. All right, let's change the width of this container to 100%, place it in the center with margin auto. Let's bring it down a little bit from the top with margin top, 10 pixels. And let's also give it a padding from left to right of 10 pixels. All right, and let me show you what these features are doing. So I'm going to delete these and let's create a card. So this is what flex start is doing. As soon as we create one, it's starting it on the left, and that's what flex start does. It's not starting it in the center, or it's not putting it over here. It's putting it here. And when we create more, notice that when we resize this, as soon as this one doesn't fit on the container anymore, it's going to go underneath these two. And that's what flex wrap is doing. So as soon as these two don't fit on the same row, it's going to go underneath that one. All right, so that's what this is doing. It's making it responsive. And of course, that's what we want. As far as the actual flashcards, we are going to create these dynamically with JavaScript, but we have to give them some dimensions here. That way we don't have to do it with JavaScript. All right, let's change the width to 370 pixels. Let's give them a height of 200. And let's use word wrap break word. And this is just in case the user decides to do something like this where they add a very long word. So when we click save on that, notice that the word got broken up. So it didn't keep going straight. It got added to the next line. So that's what that's doing. I know that I haven't really covered that feature, so that's why I'm letting you guys know. All right, let's give it a margin of 10 pixels. Let's change the background color to white. And let's give them a box shadow. And once again, I'm going to go with the same box shadow. That way I don't waste time trying to look for a box shadow that I think looks good. So let's hover this, and we're going to go with 0.5. All right, and for the actual font size of the flashcard, we're going to change it to 1 rem. All right, and that should pretty much do it. The last thing that we have to do is make sure that this looks good on a phone. So let's go over responsive design testing. And let's copy this, paste it in here. And I think that it looks good at 480 and up. And of course, right now we can't see our flashcards. I'm actually going to copy the original project. That way we can actually see how it's going to look. But we already know that this doesn't look good, and we're probably going to have to do something about this size here. Now let me run the actual project so you can see what it's going to look like after we add the features that we're going to add to it. All right, so this is what it's going to look like, and that looks good on a phone. All right, the first thing we're going to do is add a media query for 768 pixels. At that point, we want to change the margin of the flashcard to auto. This is going to place the flashcard in the center as soon as we get to a certain at 768 pixels. So notice that at this point, the flashcards are on this side, but when we get to 768 pixels, this is going to get activated and the flashcards are going to be in the center, just like that. So this is what we want. And that's what that feature is doing. And we also want to use a margin top of 10 pixels and a margin bottom of 10 pixels as well. That way we have a little bit of space between the flashcards. All right, let's create another media query. This one's going to get activated at 480 pixels. And at this point, we want to change the width of the create box to 100%. And we want to do the same thing for the flashcard. That way it fills up most of the screen and it looks nice. So let's add one more thing on here for the nav class. At this point, we want to use flex direction column and align item center. All right, let's look at that real quick. Click enter, and now at this point the two buttons are underneath, and I think that looks a little bit better. All right, that's going to be it for the CSS. All right, we're going to start off by getting access to the containers. That's going to be the flashcards container, the create card container, and we're also going to get access to the two input boxes, or actually the text areas of question, answer. And we're also going to create an array where we're going to store all of the data from the flashcards. So let's go ahead and get started here. We're going to start by getting access to the flashcards container. We're going to use document get element by class name. And we gave this a class name of flashcards. It's the only one we have, so we're going to add a 0 there. And we can actually shift alt down to copy this. This is going to be the create box container, and we gave that one a class name of create box. All right, let's get access to our text area. The first one is going to be for the question. We're going to use document get element by ID. We gave this an ID of question. And we can Shift Alt down to copy that. This is going to be answer. All right, now let's create an array that's going to hold the data from our flashcards. We're going to call it content array, and we're going to use local storage. And this is just going to check if we're already using local storage. We don't want to create a new content array if we already have something in local storage. If we do that, our contents are not going to display on the screen. So we have to check if we're already using local storage. And if we're not, if we are, then we're going to get the information from our local storage and fill this content array. So we're going to do local storage, get item. We're going to get the data from the local storage and fill our content array. But if we're not using local storage, then we're going to create a new array. All right, we have a few functions to write here. We're going to start off with the easiest ones. Let's first write the function that gets called when we click on this del cards button, which of course deletes the flashcards from the screen. And we're going to call that one del flashcards. And this is very simple. We simply have to clear the local storage with the built-in function clear. And we also have to set the inner HTML of our flashcards container to an empty string. This is going to get rid of anything that you have created in there. And we also have to set our content array back to a null array. All right, now let's create the function that gets called when we click on the close button. That's simply going to make the create card box disappear from the screen. We're going to call it the hide create box function. And this is very simple. We just need to get access to the variable that we just created, create box. And we're going to go with a display of none. All right, so now when we click this disappears off the screen. All right, to make it reappear, we have to create another function that gets called when we click on the new card button, and that's going to make it reappear. We're going to call this one the show create card box function. All right, for this one, we also get access to the create box variable, but instead of using display none for this one, we're going to use display equals block. All right, let's close this. Let's click new card, and now it reappears on the screen. All right, now let's create the function that gets called when we click on the save button. We're going to call this function the add flashcard. Let's create that function up here. All right, let's store the user input in a dictionary. Let's call the dictionary flashcard info. Our first key, we're going to call it my question, and we're going to store the user input. All right, for the answer, we're going to store it in a key called my answer, and of course we're going to use the answer that the user inputted to fill that. So this is the key, this is the value. All right, once we have both of these, we could store this dictionary inside of our content array. So to add that, we're going to use push, and let's include the name of our dictionary. All right, now we're going to place this array in local storage. We have to update our local storage every time that we add something to the content array. We're going to give our local storage a key of items, and we're going to use JSON stringify and include the name of the array. And that's how we add it to local storage. And of course, we also want to display the flashcard on the screen. So we're going to create a function called div maker, and we have to pass it this particular data from this flashcard so it could create it. So let's pass it the array, the content array, and we want to pass it this particular index. So we're going to use dot length -1. So this is going to be the last index of the array, which is of course the one that we just filled with this information. So this is the one that we want to send over to this function. All right, before we wrap this up, we want to clear the input fields of the text area boxes. So there's the question and there's the value. All right, now we have to create this div maker function, which is the one that's going to be responsible for actually placing the flashcards on the screen. We're going to create that up here. So this, we're going to call it div maker. And the reason that we're calling it that is because each flashcard is going to be basically a div element. So this is the div maker. And since we're using local storage, we don't only want to call on this function when we create a flashcard in real time. We also want to call on this function as soon as we run this project. So if we do have data in local storage, that means that there was flashcards that we had before we exited the project. So we want to re-add those flashcards onto the screen here. So we're going to have to take care of that by using content array for each. So this is going to create a flashcard, or it's going to call on this function that's going to create a flashcard for each of the flashcards that we had before we exited the project. And if you want to know more about this, I cover it in detail in the local storage series. I'll leave a link in the description so you can check that out. All right, so in this div maker function, we're going to create a div. We're going to start in that variable div. To create it, we use create element. Type in the name of the element you want to create. And we're also going to create an element for both the question and the answer. And we're going to store those in h2 elements. So we're going to call this variable h2 question. All right, let's create an element. This is going to be an h2. And let's create another one. Let's do Shift Alt down. Let's change this to h2 answer. All right, let's give this div a class name of flashcard. And remember, this flashcard is the same one that we were adding features to here. So we know the exact size of the flashcard, and we also know what font size we want the h2 to have. So we already took care of most of the CSS that we're adding to these flashcards. But there's a couple of things that we haven't added. That's because we have to add those features here because we're creating these h2 elements dynamically. So we're going to add those CSS properties directly here. So let's start off with the h2 question variable. We're going to use set attribute. This is going to allow us to give it many CSS features all at the same time. So we're going to start by giving it a border top of 1 pixel solid red. So this is going to give it that line that's going to make it look like it's an actual flashcard. And we're also going to use padding. Let's go with 15 pixels. And we're going to use margin top. Let's go with 30 pixels for that. All right, we added the CSS features. Now we have to insert the actual question into this h2 element. And we're going to do that by using text my question. So remember, this is a dictionary that we're bringing in. So in order to access the value, which is the question, we could use the key of my question. All right, we're all done with the question. Now let's take care of the answer. We're also going to use some CSS properties on this one. So we're also going to use set attribute. And for this one, we're going to use text align center. Display none. And that's because we don't want to display the answer. We only want to display it we're going to add an event listener that's going to allow them to double click it. And at that point, you're going to be able to see the answer. But at first, we want to block it. So that's why we're going to use display none. And when we actually display it on the screen, we want it to be a different color. So we're going to go with a color of red. And just like we did with the question, we have to set the inner HTML equal to my answer, which of course holds the value of the answer. All right, great. We have our two H2 elements. One has the question, one has the answer. Now we just need to add these two H2 elements to the div element. This is very simple. We just use append child, include the name of the element that you want to add. In this case, we want to start off with question. We can copy this with Shift Alt down. And we're going to change this to answer. All right, and we're almost done. Don't worry. Let's add an event listener to the div element. And this is going to make sure that when we double click it, it shows the answer. So let me just type in anything in here, click save. And when we double click this, it's going to show the answer. So we're going to add an event listener to this div that's going to make it do that. This gets activated on click. You can use double click or click. It doesn't really matter. All right, let's add a function. And this is going to check if the H2 answer, let's use style display. So if it's not showing up on the screen, or it's not on the screen, the answer is not on the screen, then we want to display it. So we're going to use H2 answer style display equals block. And this is going to display the answer on the screen. But if it's already displaying, of course, we want to block it from displaying on the screen. So we're going to use H2 answer style display equals none. All right, and one final thing, everything is all set up. The last thing we need to do is add this div element onto the flashcards container. So let's use flashcards, append child, and we're going to add this div element. And that should do it. All right, let's hope this works. We're going to click on the save button, and there's our first flashcard. Of course, that one doesn't have anything. Let's just type in anything in here. Click save, and let's click this once to reveal the answer. Click it again to hide it. I'm going to click close to close that. That's going to show it. Click del cards to delete them off the screen. And let's do one more thing here. Let's add a couple more. Let me exit. This is the original project, so don't worry about that. I'm going to exit this, and I'm going to reopen it. And our flashcards are still on the screen. So that's how you create this project of flashcards with local storage. I hope you guys learned a lot, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.